as we get back to the show, I think everybody who was tuning into NXT 1, Takeover 1, was
Yes.
all in on Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn, to me, was the most compelling person. If you ask anybody, if you ask Conrad, who's Matt's favorite wrestler, he's going to say Sami Zayn. Sami was as a good guy, as the underdog from the underground, was kind of the face of what was going on, and the crowd was
Yes, he
behind
was.
him. He also took your advice. I saw a thing he did on Breaking Ground where he took your advice of what can I make from this? What can I do with this? What can I take from this? Because he was willing to give up the generico. He was willing to take that mask off and see what you had to offer. What are your experiences, maybe recruiting, scouting, working with the great Sami Zayn?
So I knew Sammy Rami from just seeing him on enough DVDs that were getting sent to me by a lot of younger wrestlers. And I met him in Toronto, I believe, and Daniel Bryan was there. Now, I can't remember if this was before Daniel Bryan got signed and he was there for some reason, or it was just after he either he was signed or he came back, or but Sammy was there and he was sat on the steps and I already liked him and I knew who he was, and he couldn't believe that I knew who he was without his mask on, because he was another one of the reasons I really like uh, Sammy. I keep saying Sammy instead of his real name. Um, was because he, in his own way, he kept up the strength of the job. He didn't. He kept that character going, and I like that mystique thing. You know, he didn't. I've heard stories from people that I know that he's been in there with people that were on the fringes of our industry, have met him, and he's not took his mask off, and he's just said a few words in Spanish, and
That's awesome.
which is yep, exactly, and that goes a long way with me, right? Plus, I like what he did. He came, got a tryout when it was still in Tampa at FCW, and I mentioned this before. I did have to go over certain people's heads to get him hired, because there were some people that didn't see what I saw, and I it's worked out far more than I ever thought. Not that I thought there was any limit on Sammy, but I knew that he was one of the people that could, the way things were going, and if you look at the landscape of the wrestlers that were out there, I knew there was something special about him. And I don't know what that is that I have, but there's certain people I just knew. But he didn't exactly. He certainly doesn't. You wouldn't say he was a, a body guy now, but he looks a lot more. He has a lot more body now than he did then.
Yeah, he's put on a little bit of bulk. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's put on a little bit since then.
right, and but there was just something magic about him. And having talked to him, I knew there was going to be somebody with a short conversation and little snippets of conversation over the tryout. I knew. I didn't. When I say these things, I know. I knew. I had a hunch, right? And I learned to trust my own instincts on this, and it worked out, thankfully, which makes me seem a lot smarter than I am, or a lot of people think I am. It's just sometimes I have a hunch. And I knew he'd end up being an incredibly good talker. And because he certainly wasn't known for it then, was he? Because he never said anything more than "see" all the time.
No, right.
Right.
Yeah.
But just the way he talked and the way he told a story, whatever story he was telling, and the animation, I got, he had a nickname from me, the juggler. because when he used to talk, he used to do this all the time with his hands, and I knew that he'd be, and it wasn't how we started off this conversation today. It was the wrong kind of body language.
It's
Everything
just
that,
nervous energy, right? It's just
yeah,
nervous energy coming
but
out the wrong time.
but he had the right kind of body language when he was telling a story. So I knew just hearing him tell little bits of whatever he was telling to people and me, or talking to me about his time. He told me a story about his time in England and getting into a fight once at Blackpool Winter Gardens, because there's a lot of concerts go on there. I believe, I could be wrong here, but there's a White Stripes album and it's on film called White Stripes Under Blackpool Lights. That's out on video. Oh, I'm video. I got me. How long that?
It's out.
It's out. It might have been. I could have this wrong because there was somebody I knew went to that, and it might have been him. But I remember him telling me about a fight he nearly got in. There's also a big punk festival on there every year called Rebellion at the Winter Gardens in Blackpool, and it might have been there. So I could have this wrong, but I don't know why I think it's that White Stripes concert. And he told me about, and it was just the way he was telling me that I had this hunch that if he puts the time in, he's going to end up very quickly becoming a very good talker. And with his ability to make people like him, that is
That's what it
something.
is, right?
That's the
That's what
thing.
it is.
That was the
Absolutely.
key. The key to that. People like him, and people, and the same. I think we've touched on this in other. I've done so many interviews recently. It may not have been this actual show, but the people who can make people really hate them or really like them are also naturally or with a lot of work sometimes, but people trust you if they're either liking you or even in our job when they hate you, they really hate you, they're trusting you with their time. They trust you to make you, to bring an emotion out of them. And usually the people that can do that can switch it and make you hate them. Because if they've invested their time in you loving them loving you, and then you do the right thing, you can make them hate you.
Sure.
Roddy Piper was the perfect example of that. Okay. So I knew that being around him a little bit, once I started watching him, and once he got into the system, he's got this likable quality. So we're seeing it now that he knows how to make people hate him as well, because they were so invested in liking him. Doesn't matter what he was doing, he's just he knows how to connect with an audience. We've definitely said this on this show. It's the two things that matters, right? Number one, getting the promoter to hire you. Whether they like you or not doesn't matter, as long as you're getting paid. But the main thing is connecting with your audience, and he connected with his audience, and he found a way of connecting at whatever level. And he did it on many different levels as El Generico. He'd do it with his incredible wrestling, but with the entertainment aspect of it as well, which is another layer, which is, some people only have one or the other. He had both of those things going on, and not being able to express himself to earn that kind of love from an audience, which is really difficult. So everything that we saw on NXT, and we saw it come alive, and once he started getting TV time, and it was just magic. Sami Zayn was sheer magic in the Arrival show that predated Takeover. He had the
What a
match with
match in that Arrival show, huh?
Cesaro,
Mhm.
and that was you, you. You just, it's as good as it gets, right? And it's what was modern day wrestling at the time, or the previous 10 years of it all coming together. But both of them had traveled to different parts of the world and picked up little bits of everything, and they just brought that together, and it was fantastic. And then he just continued on, and he just
Sam,
continued on, and it helped with that. You know, he's a big lover of ska. Well, ska music, I don't care who you are, you've got to be completely devoid of any emotion if you don't hear ska.
it's one of the all-time great theme songs.
Yes,
That theme
but it
song is
also
amazing.
it's a joyous feeling to
Absolutely.
listen, whether you want to admit it or not, or whether you like it or not. There's something about it. It's one of those it's a style of music that gets your heart rate going. And so everything that Sami could have done, he did, as far as making himself the star that he became, and that was before he ever got to the WWE and NXT. And then all these other elements, and once, you know, he just knew what he was doing. And I mean, there's times when we're gonna get, it'll be hopefully a ways away, but when, you know, the night that he faced Nakamura for the first time, that night,
Oh,
that was that the electricity in that building was
man.
unbelievable. It
We
was
were in
just
that building,
okay.
buddy, and it was
Oh
something else. I'd nothing like it. Never seen anything
no,
like it.
right,
Ever,
right,
never,
and that was
never.
before the fella even. Rami got his, but this was, whatever people say. You know, there's only so many people look at wrestling sites and journalism. There was the be, you know, and you hear names and that, but Naka, this is pretty much an unknown entity. He was over with because the audience knew who he was, but there was something more. And when he walked out, I mean, it was just the anticipation of him walking out, and with Sami just sat there in awe, and he was sat in, like, on the bottom rope, just looking
Yeah.
in sheer awe. It was perfect.
I'm getting chills just remembering it
Right.
and you describing it, because
And,
that's how even the ending of that match. But it goes to say Sami Zayn is somebody who has that rare quality in 2022, or even back then. People want to care if he wins or loses,
no,
and that's a very rare thing. You know, they want him to win, and when he's a good guy, and when he's a bad guy, they want him to lose.
yeah,
And to me, that's a rarity
that's a rare
more than
quality.
anything.
And then
Yeah.
it's he's something very, very special. And I can't say enough good about what he did for NXT, what he did for independent wrestling before he got there. The way, you know, I mean, he busted his backside to get all over the world and did everything he had to do. The things that he's done on his own time to help people, which are very admirable. And the way he's, you know, there's a lot of things can be said about whatever happened in NXT and the transition to the main roster WWE. Sami Zayn figured it out. Sami Zayn has figured it out, and he's a top WWE superstar. And I just have nothing but admiration for him, because that to figure out and how to connect with your audience at whatever is given, he finds a way to do it. And it's his story. He might have different stories to me. I'm just looking as an outsider looking in. I never had any doubt when he left NXT. There was always not always, but sometimes there was a doubt. Are they going to work out there? I had full confidence in Sami Zayn, and knowing that he wasn't the kind of person that they would normally, you know, if you'd have said 5 years before that, oh, Sami Zayn's going to go on the main roster.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's another thing we mentioned before. absolute, complete and utter credit to John Cena for having a match with Sami Zayn and
Absolutely.
making him quickly mean something to the WWE audience if they'd never seen him before. He made him that night by the
Mhm.
performance that he let. He could have been very selfish and not given Sami, made Sami the way he made him, as he did with all of those guys that went up, the Kevins and all that, those people. There are very few people that would have ever done that. And John went out and did that and made those people care about